The dust of the makeshift auction square in Redemption Gulch settled like a shroud on the shoulders of the assembled men, their faces a gallery of grim curiosity and leering anticipation. Upon the crude wooden platform stood a girl, no more than 17 summers, her spirit a flickering candle in the harsh wind of her reality. Her name was Alara, though no one there cared to know it. She was chattel, a line item in a ledger of human misery, her virginity touted by the auctioneer, Silas Blackwood, a man whose voice was as slick and cold as a serpent's belly. Gentleman, a rare bloom, untouched, pure as the driven snow and twice as fetching, Blackwood's voice boomed, his words a profanity against the silent dignity Alara struggled to maintain. Her eyes, the color of a stormy sky, scanned the crowd, not for a savior, for she had learned long ago that saviors did not frequent places like this, but for a flicker of something other than predatory hunger. She found none. Then a hand raised, not a coarse, eager hand, but one steady and weathered, belonging to a man who stood apart from the throng. His silence a stark contrast to their boisterous bids. Josiah, a farmer from the distant Whisperwind Creek, his face etched with a quiet sorrow that mirrored her own, had raised his hand. A hush fell thick and sudden. He was not known for such purchases, nor for frequenting such dens of vice. His bid, when it came, was not a lustful roar, but a calm, determined statement, cutting through the avarice like a keen blade. 100 gold eagles, he said, his voice surprisingly resonant, carrying the weight of an unshakable resolve. The sum was exorbitant, enough to buy a prize bull, a small herd. Blackwood's eyes, greedy and small, widened. This quiet farmer had just stunned the whole of Redemption Gulch, and in Alara's heart, a desperate, unbelievable seed of something akin to hope, so long dormant, dared to stir. What did this man want, and what would his price truly be? Josiah's bid, hanging in the acrid air, silenced the murmurs and the lewd jests. Silas Blackwood, momentarily thrown by the sheer audacity and the unexpected source of the bid, quickly recovered his oily composure. 100 gold eagles from the quiet farmer, he bellowed, a smirk playing on his lips, convinced this was some momentary folly he could exploit. Do I hear 110? A finer piece you'll not find this side of the territories. But the other men, initially eager, now hesitated. Some knew Josiah by reputation. A man of his word, stern but fair, not one to be trifled with lightly, nor one known for public spectacles. Others were simply cowed by the sheer size of the bid, far exceeding what they were willing or able to part with for such a risky purchase. The silence stretched, broken only by the nervous shuffle of boots in the dust. Alara watched Josiah, her gaze fixed on his unreadable expression. He met her eyes, just for a moment, and in that fleeting connection, she saw not the calculating gaze of a buyer assessing merchandise, but something else, something that resonated with the deep ache of her own soul, a shared understanding of sorrow, perhaps, or a profound weariness with the cruelty of the world. Going once, Blackwood called, his voice losing some of its earlier confidence. Going twice. He scanned the crowd, his eyes like a hawk seeking prey, but found no further takers. Sold, he finally declared, slamming his gavel down with a crack that made Alara flinch. To the farmer, for 100 gold eagles. Josiah stepped forward, his movements deliberate, as he counted out the heavy gold coins into Blackwood's eager palm. The transaction complete, he turned to Alara. He didn't reach for her, didn't utter a command. He simply said, his voice low and steady, "Come, girl. You're with me now." Fear warred with a fragile, nascent trust as she stepped down from the platform, her legs unsteady. The journey from Redemption Gulch was a blur of dust and the rhythmic creak of Josiah's wagon. He had offered her a blanket, which she clutched tightly, a meager shield against the chill of the evening and the deeper chill of her uncertainty. He spoke little, but his silence was not unkind. As the lights of the corrupt town receded behind them, swallowed by the vast, indifferent darkness of the plains, Alara wondered if she had merely traded one cage for another, more gilded perhaps, but a cage nonetheless. The twinkling stars above seemed to offer no answers, only a cold, distant beauty. They arrived at Whisperwind Creek Ranch under the cloak of a moonless night, the air fresh with the scent of pine and damp earth, a stark contrast to the fetid stench of Redemption Gulch. The farmhouse was a dark silhouette against the star-dusted sky, a single light glowing warmly from a window, a beacon in the vast darkness. As Josiah helped her down from the wagon, his touch gentle on her arm, a woman emerged from the house, a lantern held high. She was older, her face kind, etched with the wisdom of years, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Josiah, you're back late," she said, her voice soft but clear, concern lacing her tone. Then her eyes fell on Alara, huddled in her blanket, and a flicker of understanding, mixed with a deep, maternal compassion, softened her features. "And you've brought someone," Josiah nodded, his expression weary. "Martha, this is Alara. She'll be staying with us." Martha, the ranch's housekeeper and Josiah's loyal confidant for longer than Alara could guess, simply nodded, her gaze sweeping over Alara with a kindness that brought an unbidden lump to the girl's throat. "Well, comin' out of the cold, child," Martha said, her voice a balm. "There's stew on the stove and a warm bed waiting." Alara was led into a small, immaculately clean room, a world away from the filth and despair she had known. A simple bed with a patchwork quilt, a washstand with a pitcher and basin, a small window looking out onto the unseen landscape. Martha helped her with the blanket, her touch surprisingly gentle. "You're safe here, dear," she murmured, as if sensing the storm of fear and confusion raging within Alara. Later, after a bowl of warm stew eaten in the quiet kitchen, Josiah spoke to her, his voice devoid of demand or expectation. "Alara," he began, his gaze direct but not intrusive. "You are not a slave here. You are not my possession. I couldn't leave you in that place. What happened today was an injustice. Here you are free. You owe me nothing." He paused, his weathered face shadowed by the lamplight. "Rest. Tomorrow is another day." Alara could only nod, words failing her. Free? The concept was so alien, so vast, she could scarcely comprehend it. As she lay in the clean, soft bed, the silence of the ranch enveloped her, a silence not of desolation, but of peace. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, a tiny, fragile ember of hope began to glow a little brighter within her, fanned by the unexpected sanctuary she had found. But the shadows of her past were long, and trust was a language she had almost forgotten how to speak. The days that followed unfurled with a quiet rhythm, a gentle cadence that was entirely new to Alara. She woke to the sounds of the ranch stirring to life, the distant lowing of cattle, the crow of a rooster, the soft murmur of Martha in the kitchen. Initially, she stayed mostly in her room, a frightened deer poised for flight, expecting the kindness to curdle, the gentle words to turn into demands. But Josiah asked nothing of her. He went about his work on the ranch, his presence steady and unobtrusive. She would watch him from her window, a solitary figure moving with a quiet competence across his land, mending fences, tending to the horses, his hands, though calloused and strong, surprisingly gentle with the animals. Martha, with her intuitive warmth, became a quiet bridge. She never pressed Alara for information, never prodded her wounds. Instead, she offered companionship in small, unassuming ways, a shared cup of tea, a quiet hour shelling peas on the porch, a soft hum as she went about her chores. Slowly, tentatively, Alara began to emerge from her shell. She started by helping Martha with small tasks in the kitchen, her movements initially hesitant, then gaining confidence as she rediscovered the forgotten rhythms of domesticity. She found a strange solace in the simple act of kneading dough, the scent of baking bread a comfort to her bruised spirit. One evening, Josiah returned from the fields, weary and dust-covered. Martha had prepared a hearty supper, and for the first time, Alara sat with them at the big wooden table in the kitchen. The silence was companionable, broken only by the clinking of cutlery and the sigh of the wind outside. Then Josiah, looking at Alara, spoke of a new foal born that morning, his voice filled with a quiet pride. "A little filly," he said, a rare smile touching the corners of his lips. Spirited, like her mother Alara found herself asking, her voice barely a whisper. "What will you name her?" Josiah seemed pleasantly surprised by her question. He paused, considering. "Perhaps, Hope," he said, his eyes meeting hers, a subtle meaning passing between them. That night, Alara realized she hadn't thought of Redemption Gulch all day. The ranch was beginning to feel less like a temporary refuge and more like something else, something she dared not yet name. The past sorrow in Josiah's eyes was still there, a constant shadow, and she wondered about the woman who was no longer by his side, the silence in the house sometimes echoing with an unspoken grief. Weeks turned into a season. The harsh glare of summer softened into the golden hues of autumn, and with the changing landscape, Alara too began to transform. The haunted look in her eyes lessened, replaced by a cautious curiosity. She started to explore the ranch beyond the immediate confines of the house and yard, drawn to the quiet beauty of Whisperwind Creek. She discovered a small, neglected patch behind the smokehouse that had once been a garden. With a tentative request to Martha, and then to Josiah, who readily supplied her with seeds and tools, Alara began to tend to it. Her fingers, surprisingly adept, coaxed life from the dormant soil. She found a quiet joy in nurturing the tender shoots, a reflection, perhaps, of the healing taking place within her own heart. Josiah would often find her there, her brow furrowed in concentration as she weeded or watered, a smudge of dirt on her cheek. He never interrupted, merely observed, a quiet approval in his gaze. He learned, through Martha, that Alara had a knack for healing herbs, a knowledge gleaned from a grandmother long gone, a faint echo of a life before her descent into darkness. This was the first real clue about her past, a past she still held close, unwilling or unable to share. One crisp evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in fiery strokes, Josiah spoke, his voice gentle. "My wife, Sarah," he began, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "She loved this time of day. She planted that old rosebush by the fence. It hasn't bloomed much since she passed." Alara listened, her heart aching for this quiet, solitary man who had shown her such unexpected kindness. She didn't offer empty platitudes, just sat with him in the shared silence, a silence that now felt comfortable, laden with unspoken understanding. Later that week, Alara carefully pruned the neglected rosebush, her touch gentle, whispering soft words of encouragement to the gnarled branches. It was a small gesture, but one that spoke volumes. When Josiah saw it, he simply nodded, a look of profound gratitude in his eyes. He was beginning to see the resilient spirit he had first glimpsed on that wretched auction block bloom in the safety of his home. And Alara, nurtured by kindness and respect, was slowly, painstakingly, reclaiming pieces of herself she thought irretrievably lost. The ranch was becoming her sanctuary, Josiah and Martha her unlikely family. But even in this haven, the faintest whisper of an approaching storm could sometimes be felt on the wind. The fragile peace of Whisperwind Creek Ranch was shattered one afternoon by the arrival of Tom Jenkins, a neighboring rancher, his face grim. He found Josiah mending a fence line near the northern pasture. "Josiah," Tom began without preamble, his voice low and urgent. "Words come down from Redemption Gulch. Silas Blackwood's been asking questions." Josiah's hand stilled on the fence wire, his weathered face hardening. "What kind of questions?" he asked, his voice deceptively calm, though a cold dread began to coil in his gut. "About a girl," Tom said, his gaze shifting uneasily. "A girl you supposedly acquired. He's not happy, Josiah. Says he was cheated, that the girl was worth more or that you had no right. He's a nasty piece of work, that Blackwood. Got a couple of hard men with him, too." The news struck Josiah like a physical blow. He had hoped, foolishly perhaps, that Blackwood would be content with his exorbitant profit and forget about Alara. But men like Blackwood were driven by greed and a twisted sense of pride. They did not easily suffer what they perceived as a slight or a loss. He thanked Tom for the warning, his mind already racing. The sanctuary he had tried to build for Elara felt suddenly vulnerable, exposed. That evening, the atmosphere in the farmhouse was heavy with unspoken tension. Elara, intuitive as ever, sensed the shift immediately. The easy companionship of recent weeks was replaced by a taut watchfulness in Josiah, a worried furrow in Martha's brow. "What is it?" Elara finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper, her eyes wide with a familiar, rekindled fear. Josiah looked at her, his heart aching at the terror that instantly shadowed her face, erasing the fragile peace he had so carefully nurtured. He couldn't lie to her, couldn't shield her from this. "Blackwood," he said, his voice grim. "He's looking for you." The name alone was enough to make Elara recoil as if struck. The color drained from her face, her hands clenching into fists in her lap. The progress she had made, the tentative trust she had built, seemed to crumble in an instant, replaced by the stark, visceral memory of the auction block, the leering faces, Blackwood's cruel voice. He found me?" she stammered, her gaze darting towards the door as if expecting Blackwood himself to burst through it. Josiah reached across the table, his calloused hand covering hers. "He hasn't found us yet," he said, his voice firm, trying to inject a confidence he didn't entirely feel. "And I won't let him take you, Elara. This is your home now. We'll protect you, Martha," ever practical, added. "We'll be ready for him, child." But Elara's fear, once reawakened, was a powerful, chilling force, threatening to drag her back into the abyss. The sanctuary felt besieged, and the coming confrontation loomed like a thunderhead on the horizon. The next few days were fraught with an unbearable tension. Every distant sound, every creak of the farmhouse, sent Elara into a state of heightened alert. Sleep offered little respite, her nights haunted by shadowy figures and Blackwood's leering face. Josiah, meanwhile, made quiet preparations. He checked his rifle, ensured the ammunition was dry, and spoke in hushed tones with Jed, his most trusted ranch hand, a wiry, quiet man fiercely loyal to Josiah. They reinforced the locks on the doors and windows, small measures against what felt like an inevitable onslaught. Josiah moved with a grim determination, his usual quiet demeanor replaced by a steely resolve. He knew Blackwood wouldn't simply ride up and knock. Men like him preferred intimidation, ambush, the path of least resistance if they could find it, or overwhelming force if they couldn't. He tried to reassure Elara, but his words felt hollow even to his own ears against the weight of her terror. He saw the retreat in her eyes, the way she flinched at sudden movements, the way she barely touched her food. The vibrant girl who had started to bloom was wilting under the shadow of her past. One afternoon, as a storm gathered ominously in the west, mirroring the turmoil in their hearts, they saw them, 3 riders, dark figures against the bruised sky, approaching the ranch not by the main road, but across the open range, a clear sign of their ill intent. Jed, posted as a lookout, galloped back to the house, his face pale. "They're here, Josiah." Blackwood and 2 others. Josiah nodded, his jaw tight. "Martha, take Elara to the root cellar. Stay there until I come for you." Elara, her face ashen, clung to Martha's arm. "No," she whispered, a surprising strength in her voice. I won't hide like a frightened rabbit." "Not anymore." Josiah looked at her, surprised. Then a grim sort of pride flickered in his eyes. "All right," he said, "but stay inside, away from the windows. Martha, keep her safe." As Martha drew Elara further into the house, Josiah stepped onto the porch, his rifle held loosely at his side, Jed a silent, formidable presence just behind him. The riders reined in at the edge of the yard. Silas Blackwood, a cruel smirk on his face, dismounted. "Farmer," he called out, his voice dripping with malice. "We've come for what's mine. The girl. Hand her over and we'll be on our way." "No trouble." Josiah's voice was cold as winter wind. "She's not yours to take, Blackwood. She's under my protection. Turn your horses around and leave." Now Blackwood chuckled, a nasty, grating sound. "Protection? You think you can protect her from me?" I own her, farmer. Bought and paid for long before your sentimental stunt. He gestured to his two thuggish companions, who dismounted, their hands hovering near their holstered guns. The air crackled with menace, the scent of rain and impending violence thick and cloying. The confrontation, long dreaded, was finally upon them. The moment stretched, taut as a bowstring. Blackwood's smirk widened into a sneer. Last chance, farmer. Don't be a fool. She ain't worth dying for. Josiah's grip tightened on his rifle. She's worth more than you could ever comprehend, Blackwood. She's a human being, not property. And this is my land. You're trespassing. He raised his rifle slightly, a clear warning. Leave or be removed from inside the house. A small sound, a stifled gasp, reminded Josiah of who he was fighting for. Blackwood, seeing no easy intimidation, spat on the ground. Then we'll take her. He gave a sharp nod to his men, and they started to advance, fanning out, their intentions murderously clear. The first shot was not from Josiah, but from Jed, whose rifle cracked, kicking up dust near the feet of one of Blackwood's thugs, making him stumble. Next one won't miss, Jed yelled, his voice surprisingly powerful. The thug cursed, diving for cover behind a water trough. Blackwood, enraged, drew his own pistol, firing wildly towards the porch. Josiah returned fire, his shot aimed not to kill, but to deter, splintering the hitching post near Blackwood. The exchange of gunfire was sudden and brutal, shattering the peace of Whisperwind Creek. Inside, Martha shielded Alara, who, despite her terror, peeked through a crack in the curtains. She saw Josiah, a figure of resolute strength, standing against the encroaching darkness. Then, she saw the second thug trying to circle around the side of the house, clearly aiming to get a flanking shot or perhaps even reach the back door. A desperate courage, born of a refusal to be a victim any longer, surged through Alara. She remembered the heavy iron poker by the fireplace. While Martha was focused on the front, Alara slipped away, her heart pounding. The thug was stealthily trying the back door handle. It was locked. He grunted in frustration, then peered through the small kitchen window. Alara, poker held high, was a silent shadow in the dim kitchen. As his face appeared, she brought the poker down with all her might against the window frame, just inches from his head. The man yelped in surprise and pain, stumbling back, his attention diverted. That momentary distraction was all Josiah needed. Seeing the movement from the corner of his eye and Alara's desperate act, he whirled and fired. His shot caught the thug in the shoulder, sending him spinning to the ground, howling. Blackwood, seeing one man down and the other pinned, realized his position was untenable. With a final venomous glare at Josiah, he scrambled onto his horse. "This isn't over, farmer," he screamed, before galloping away, leaving his injured man groaning in the dirt. Jed kept his rifle trained on the remaining thug until he, too, seeing his employer flee, surrendered, his bravado gone. Justice, swift and decisive, had come to Whisperwind Creek, not through a badge or a court, but through the courage of ordinary people defending what was right. The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind of adrenaline and shaky relief. Jed disarmed the injured thug and bound his hands, while Josiah quickly checked the house. He found Alara in the kitchen, the iron poker still clutched in her trembling hands, her face pale but resolute. Martha was by her side, her arm around the girl's shoulders, murmuring words of comfort. When Josiah entered, Alara looked up, her eyes wide, searching his face. Is it over?" she whispered. Josiah knelt beside her, gently taking the poker from her grasp. "It's over, Alara," he said, his voice softer now, the harsh edge of battle gone. "You were incredibly brave." A faint blush touched her cheeks, but the fear still lingered in her eyes. He said it isn't over." Josiah met her gaze, his own unwavering. "Men like Blackwood make empty threats when they're beaten. He won't be back. Not here. He knows now this place is defended, not just by guns, but by something stronger." He meant courage and conviction, and the unbreakable bond that had been forged in the crucible of that afternoon. They tended to the injured thug, a grim task, before Jed rode to the nearest town with a proper marshal to hand him over, along with a full account of Blackwood's attack. The other thug, the one Jed had pinned down, had simply mounted his horse and fled in the wake of Blackwood's retreat. His loyalty as shallow as his courage. As dusk settled, casting long shadows across the ranch, a profound quiet descended, different from the tense silence of the preceding days. It was a quiet of exhaustion, but also of peace, hard-won and precious. Martha prepared a simple meal, and they ate together, the three of them, in the warm glow of the kitchen lamplight. Words were few, but the sense of shared experience, of having faced a terrible threat and overcome it together, bound them in a way that nothing else could. Elara, though still shaken, carried herself with a new quiet dignity. She had not just been rescued. She had, in her own way, participated in her own defense. She had found her voice, not in words, but in action. Josiah looked at her, seeing not the terrified girl from the auction block, but a resilient young woman, strong and true. The ranch, once just a sanctuary offered, had truly become her home. And they, an unlikely trio bound by circumstance and courage, had become a family, chosen not by blood, but by the deeper ties of loyalty, respect, and a shared commitment to protect the light against the encroaching darkness. The themes of second chances and the inherent worth of every soul were no longer abstract ideals. They were the very foundation of their lives at Whisperwind Creek. Years flowed by like the creek itself, sometimes turbulent, mostly serene, carving a path of enduring prosperity and quiet joy at Whisperwind Creek Ranch. The shadow of Silas Blackwood faded, becoming a distant, unpleasant memory, a testament to a darkness overcome. Elara blossomed in the sanctuary she now unequivocally called home. The tentative girl transformed into a confident, capable woman, her knowledge of herbs and healing becoming a quiet blessing to the ranch and even neighboring homesteads. The neglected garden behind the smokehouse flourished under her care, a vibrant tapestry of colors and scents, a symbol of the life she had cultivated against all odds. Josiah, his quiet strength a constant presence, found a lightness return to his spirit that he thought long lost with Sarah. His bond with Elara deepened, evolving from protector and protected to one of true partnership, built on mutual respect, shared laughter, and an unspoken, profound affection that warmed the corners of their solitary lives. The ranch thrived not just in cattle and crops, but in spirit. It became known as a place of fairness, of refuge, a quiet beacon where dignity was a currency more valued than gold. The rosebush Sarah had planted, and which Elara had so tenderly revived, bloomed extravagantly each year, its fragrant blossoms a tribute to memories cherished and new beginnings embraced. Martha, her silver hair now a crown of white, watched over them with a matriarch's gentle pride, her presence a comforting constant. Children's laughter eventually echoed in the yard, not their own by birth, but those of Jed, who married and started a family on a piece of land Josiah gifted him, and other families who found work and welcome at Whisperwind. Elara and Josiah never formalized their bond in the eyes of the law or the church, for their connection transcended such conventions. They were partners in every sense, their lives interwoven, their hearts attuned. They built a legacy not of grand monuments, but of quiet kindness, of steadfast integrity, and the unwavering belief in the power of a second chance. The story of the quiet farmer and the girl he saved from an auction block became a local legend, a tale whispered around campfires, a reminder that even in the harshest of lands, humanity could flourish, that a chosen family could be stronger than any tie of blood, and that true wealth lay not in possessions, but in the richness of a life lived with courage, compassion, and unwavering love. Whisperwind Creek Ranch stood as a testament to that enduring truth, a beacon of hope for generations to come. Its roots sunk deep into the fertile soil of shared dreams and a future they had bravely built together.